Meet Streppy's the mongoose. She's not only a survivor, but one heck of a fighter.
In the 1970s, Japan embarked on a bold experiment and released an army of snake-ending mongooses onto the pristine island of Amami Oshima. But 25 years later, the consequences of that decision would stun the world, expose a catastrophic tale of ecological devastation, unintended consequences, and a stark warning for conservation efforts worldwide. Can an invasive species ever be a hero? What's the true cost of playing with nature's delicate balance? Join us as we unveil how Japan brought snake hunters to the island, and 25 years later, everyone was shocked. The solution becomes a problem. Imagine introducing an animal to address a problem, only for it to create an even greater one. In the late 1970s, Japan faced a disturbing issue with venomous snake bites, particularly in rural regions. To tackle this danger, the Japanese authorities introduced mongoose with the aim of controlling the snake population and saving lives. However, over the next 25 years, an unexpected situation came into play. The habu, a venomous pit viper species native to Japan's Ryukyu Islands, specifically Okinawa and Taiwan, posed a severe threat due to its venomous bites, which were particularly challenging in certain areas. For instance, in 1980 alone, approximately 400 people were bitten, with some sadly meeting their demise from the bite. Although Japan has several venomous snake species, the most hazardous are the larger types, like the habu and its relatives, the eastern pit vipers. These snakes belong to the same family as rattlesnakes and puff adders, with distant relatives including coral snakes and cobras. As a result, Japan was in a tight spot as people lived in constant danger of being bitten. Habu snake bites were particularly dangerous because, for a long time, no antidote was known nor discovered. Even after some Protobothrops antivenom, Habu antivenom, Trimeresurus antivenom, and polyvalent antivenom were developed, it was challenging to access them. And for those who could access it, the antidotes in liquid form could not be stored in rural areas lacking electricity or proper storage facilities. Unfortunately, most snake bites occurred in these remote regions, where establishing power lines was time-consuming and costly. Creating an accessible antidote, therefore, seemed like a mission impossible, making a bad situation worse for those struck by snake venom. Japan eventually devised a brilliant solution by introducing an animal that preys on snakes and is immune to their venom. This led to the introduction of mongooses, however. As with many plans, things weren't as successful as expected, but they managed to gain control of the situation. In 1979, around 30 small Indian mongooses were introduced to Amami Oshima Island to address local issues, including controlling the habu snake population and reducing the number of rats. Mongooses are native to regions like India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, and Pakistan, so Japan's wildlife was unprepared for these newcomers. Their arrival was a total game changer, with the local ecosystem affected in ways no one anticipated. By 1993, the mongoose population on Amami Oshima Island had grown significantly, prompting concern from the Ministry of the Environment. By the year 2000, their numbers had skyrocketed to about 10,000. While the habu snake population did decrease, it was not due to the mongooses. Despite initial hopes, the mongooses showed little interest in hunting the venomous snakes, opting instead for easier prey. As a result, the original issue of snake bites remained a persistent challenge for the local community. At first, mongooses appeared to be the perfect solution for managing snake populations. Known for their speed and agility, they are excellent hunters, especially against cobras, which are related to the habu. Another advantage of mongooses is their special receptors that help them resist cobra venom. This allows them to survive bites that would be fatal for most other animals. Also, evolution has blessed them with quick reflexes and sharp teeth, which makes them effective at delivering lethal bites to snakes. In theory, mongooses seemed like the best choice for controlling the snake population and keeping the area safe from bites. However, a red flag was raised. Mongooses are active during the day, while habu snakes are nocturnal, meaning they rarely encounter each other. Even when they did meet, mongooses were not very effective at hunting snakes. Snakes can be challenging to catch, and pursuing them requires a lot of effort. Why go after difficult prey when there's plenty of easier food available, like mice and rabbits? Well, with the mongoose population spiraling out of control, the Japanese wouldn't fold their arms, watching the ineffective mongooses. But how does one solve a problem that was meant to solve another? The Japanese triumph over the invasive mongooses. The decision resembles picking between caviar and crackers, but the caviar comes with claws. As a result, despite their hunting skills, mongooses turned out to be entirely ineffective for the task they were brought in to perform. Meanwhile, mongooses thrived in their new environment where they successfully bred. By the year 2000, the Japanese government had initiated a program to reduce the population. Since then, around 32,000 mongooses have been captured, with the last recorded capture occurring in April 2018, and no new cases have been reported since. This led experts to declare that the mongoose population on Amami Oshima had been completely eradicated. The Ministry of the Environment announced this achievement with excitement, even though the mongoose likely wouldn't share in that joy. But how did Japan manage to eliminate the invasive mongooses? The journey was not easy. Initially, traps were set up along the roads, but these were largely ineffective as they rarely attracted mongooses. It therefore took only a short time before they realized they needed to think outside the box. Eventually, specially designed traps, toxic bait, and attractants, substances that lure animals with their scent, were employed. Different monitoring techniques, including search dogs, were also used. This solution offered a real game changer and turned the tide in the battle against the overpopulated mongoose community. It was shown that the mongoose population shows a decline in numbers, while bars indicate the increasing number of traps set. These new traps were specifically designed for mongooses in order to ensure that other animals would not be caught. Local civilians also played a key role in this effort. Since 2005, teams of mongoose hunters made up of locals and volunteers have dedicated countless hours to trapping mongooses. Some may wonder why such extensive effort was necessary. Couldn't they have simply left the mongooses alone? Why the battle to evict mongooses was necessary? While it is true that they were not native to the island, it was essential to take action. Instead of helping to control the snake population as hoped, the mongooses began preying on the island's native species, including the Amami rabbit and other local animals. Amami Oshima is a subtropical island and a UNESCO World Heritage Site, home to many rare and vulnerable species. The mongooses specifically targeted the Amami rabbit, which is sadly now endangered. Thus, removing the mongooses was not just necessary, it was crucial for preserving the island's ecosystem. These Amami rabbits are often referred to as living fossils because they are the last survivors of an ancient species of Asian rabbits. Many years ago, rabbits inhabited the mainland, but now they survive only on 2 small islands. Regrettably, mongooses have significantly diminished their chances of survival. These mongooses have also severely affected the populations of ruku rats, which are now endangered. In total, approximately 15 native species have been harmed by the introduction of mongooses, which were initially brought in with benevolent intentions. The agricultural sector also encountered challenges due to the mongooses. These creatures easily preyed on farm birds, consumed fruits from fields, and spread diseases to livestock that they did not even consume. In just 2 decades, the habitat for small animals decreased by 40%. It became crystal clear that introducing mongooses to the small Japanese islands was extremely detrimental. Islands have quite beautiful ecosystems, home to species that are not accustomed to dealing with predators and do not know how to defend themselves. The arrival of a new predator would pose problems anywhere, but islands are particularly susceptible. When that predator is a mongoose, known for consuming almost anything it can capture, the damage becomes even more severe. It took nearly 25 years to evict the mongooses and almost 50 years to complete the entire initiative. While removing so many mongooses might appear harsh, Japan made the correct decision to safeguard local species. If invasive species get the upper hand, they can spell disaster. Not stopping them early on makes it a tough nut to crack later. Japan knocked it out of the park by eliminating mongooses from Amami Oshima, especially since it is one of only 9 instances globally where mongooses have been entirely removed. It is also the sole case where this has been accomplished on such a large island. The venomous snakes and mongooses today. To provide some context, habu snake bites have become much less of a concern. By 2020, the number of bites decreased to around 60 each year. However, this improvement wasn't attributed to the mongooses. Instead, people began taking more preventative measures, and antidotes became more accessible, which helped avert fatalities. Since 1992, there hasn't been a single reported death from a habu bite. While mongooses were not the solution, the community's efforts have certainly made a positive impact in reducing snake bites and ensuring public safety. However, the battle against invasive species isn't finished yet. Mongooses still exist on other islands, and the lessons learned from Amami Oshima are being applied in other regions of Japan. For example, a team of specialists is set to head to northern Okinawa, where mongooses have also been observed. There is a genuine concern that mongooses from Okinawa could invade Amami Oshima again, and this has compelled Japan to restart its efforts. Mongooses were introduced to Okinawa during the Meiji era. Approximately 70 years before their introduction to Amami Oshima, 17 mongooses were released in Okinawa. The conditions in Okinawa are more conducive for them, with a warmer climate and an environment similar to their natural habitat. As a result, the reproduction and survival rates of mongooses are higher in Okinawa, and this has complicated conservation initiatives in Japan. Currently, the mongoose population in northern Okinawa is being managed, while in the central and southern areas they continue to prosper. Fences have been constructed in Okinawa to hinder the spread of mongooses, and they appear to be effective. Although the barriers are not particularly tall, they have an L shape at the base to prevent mongooses from burrowing underneath. Typically, mongooses do not scale these obstacles. However, similar to Amami Oshima, the survival of 3 native bird species in Okinawa now relies on controlling the mongoose population. If the narrative of introducing mongooses to manage pests sounds familiar, you are correct. Japan is not the first nation to attempt biological control. There exists an entire field of study dedicated to this technique, which involves utilizing one species to regulate another. Generally, when pursuing biological control, researchers begin by examining the pest and its natural predator. They then conduct additional inquiries to assess whether introducing the predator could adversely impact other species in the vicinity. Only after comprehensive investigations do they typically release the predator to perform its function. Human beings have been employing biological control for an extended period, often with success. A well-known example is farmers using predatory insects to safeguard their fruit trees and gardens. This method can be a double-edged sword. It is therefore recommended to handle with care to prevent unforeseen consequences, as Japan's mongoose saga demonstrates. How mongooses have been seen as the messiah since the 1800s. The small Asian mongoose has been introduced to various regions, including Cuba, Croatia, Jamaica, Haiti, Puerto Rico, the Lesser Antilles, Honduras, Panama, and several other countries. In many instances, these introductions have been successful. However, Hawaii decided to experiment with mongooses in the 1800s. At that time, Hawaii's most valuable crop was sugarcane, and the plan was to employ mongooses to help control the rat population that was damaging the sugarcane fields. From the mid-1800s to the mid-1900s, Hawaiian sugar plantations encountered a shocking issue with rats that were eager to gnaw on sweet sugarcane stalks. The rats caused considerable destruction, and plantation owners were desperate for a remedy. In 1872, these plantation owners came across an article about how Caribbean sugar producers used mongooses to address their rat problem. The concept seemed straightforward. Bring mongooses from India to consume the rats, and everything would be resolved. Therefore, in the 1880s, Hawaiian planters imported 72 mongooses from Jamaica to the Big Island. Their offspring were subsequently sent to plantations on other islands, including Maui, Molokai, and Oahu, in hopes of finally resolving the rat issue. Even then, some individuals on the Big Island were skeptical about the mongoose initiative. They believed more research was required to understand how the animals performed in the Caribbean before introducing them to Hawaii. Unfortunately, these skeptics were ignored, and soon the plan's major flaw became apparent. Rats are nocturnal, meaning they are active only at night, while mongooses are diurnal. This difference in activity patterns meant that they rarely encountered one another. Instead of resolving the rat issue, mongooses began to prey on native Hawaiian species, particularly birds and turtles. The eggs of these animals became easy targets, and the situation deteriorated further. What was intended to be a solution ended up creating new challenges for Hawaii's wildlife. When native species were pushed to the wall, the government drew the curtains to keep mongooses out of sensitive areas. However, it seemed Hawaii had missed its opportunity to act. Today, controlling the mongoose population has become exceedingly difficult, nearly impossible. Mongooses are responsible for the extinction of at least 8 native bird species in Hawaii, many of which were on the federal endangered species list. This has created a serious problem for the island's wildlife, as these animals are now lost forever due to the introduction of mongooses. Interestingly, the Hawaiian government does not refer to the introduction of mongooses as biological control, since the animals did not undergo an environmental impact assessment before being brought in. Hawaii was not the only location where difficulties were encountered after introducing mongooses. In 1872, a British colonist brought mongooses to a sugar plantation in Jamaica to address the rat problem. However, instead of consuming the rats, the mongooses spread across the island, leading to a decline in local bird and reptile populations. With fewer creatures to keep them in check, ticks got out of hand, and this added fuel to the fire. The colonists complained to British authorities, but they dismissed his concerns, claiming that nature would balance itself out. Spoiler alert, it didn't. The introduction of mongooses caused serious harm to Jamaica's native species. Further confirmation of mongooses' destructive acts. Hawaii's experience, like Jamaica's, serves as a warning about how introducing non-native species without proper research can have disastrous consequences for local communities. On 4 small islands in the Caribbean Sea, St. Croix ground lizards scurry through fallen leaves, fighting to survive. Unfortunately, these lizards were completely wiped out on the island they were named after due to 2 major threats: the introduction of ravenous mongooses and land redevelopment on 2 neighboring coastal islands. Only about 400 lizards remained the fortunate ones that escaped being eaten. Fortunately, people raised the alarm in time, and conservation efforts began. The lizards were relocated to safer areas, and thanks to these initiatives, their population has now grown to nearly 3,000 individuals. Scientists are diligently working not only to prevent their extinction, but also to reintroduce these lizards to their island, giving them a chance to reclaim their original home. Mongoose are not only seen as destructive in Hawaii. In fact, recently, the Animal Welfare Society of South Africa, AWS, warned Kenwyn residents to be vigilant due to a mongoose sighting in the area. This gray mongoose has been regularly visiting properties, with reports on social media indicating its presence in Kenwyn and Lansdowne for most of 2024 and also in 2023. The AWS advised residents not to feed or approach the animal and to refrain from attempting to domesticate it as a pet. Additionally, residents were encouraged to keep their dogs away from the mongoose. In a recent study of 4,000-year-old tombs in Egypt, researchers discovered a fascinating drawing depicting a person leading an animal resembling a mongoose on a leash. This is the only image of its kind found in Egyptian art, and clearly shows both a collar and a leash. Although mongooses have never been fully domesticated through controlled breeding, some cultures have kept them as pets. The primary reason for this is to help control pests like snakes, rats, and mice, which can cause problems in homes and farms. This ancient drawing offers a glimpse into how mongooses were valued long ago. Interestingly, scientists believe the mongoose depicted in the tomb may have been used to scare off birds, making hunting easier. There is even some debate regarding a second leash in the drawing. Some people think it is attached to a dog, while others suggest it could be a hornless goat. Mongooses taking up surprising roles. Speaking of mongooses taking on unexpected roles, in Sri Lanka, where dogs are typically used to sniff out illegal substances, a new concept has emerged, using mongooses instead. Locals have relied on mongooses for generations to chase away cobras from their farms. So why not train them to detect illegal items? A grant of $50,000 was awarded for a pilot project, and a specialist was hired. The National Zoo even offered its facilities for training, and this created an opportunity to assess whether mongooses could adapt to this new task. The plan involved releasing a few mongooses into a cargo container filled with car parts. If they detected anything illegal, they would emerge with bristling tails. Believe it or not, mongooses can be trained, and they pass the test with flying colors. Unfortunately, due to changes in leadership and political issues, the project was ultimately abandoned. It's a real disappointment, as it would have been remarkable to see mongooses working as customs officers. Just imagine them in action, sniffing out contraband. Where predators are rare, mongooses become tiny terror of disease. In the wilderness of Botswana, a pathogen known as Mycobacterium mungi employs a clever strategy for infecting the banded mongoose. This relative of the bacterium that causes tuberculosis in humans spreads from one animal to another through scent markings, which mongooses leave in their habitats as a means of scent-based communication. This takes advantage of a behavior that is vital for mongoose survival and ensures the microbe's effectiveness, according to Kathleen Alexander, a wildlife biologist at Virginia Tech. However, when a mongoose detects a nearby predator, it is less likely to leave its scent behind, and this disrupts the transmission of the bacteria, according to a recent study published in the journal. In settings with fewer predators, a mongoose will continue to mark its scent, thereby creating what are known as super-spreading areas teeming with infection. To conduct their research, Alexander and her former graduate student, Carol Ann Nichols, utilized radio collars and camera traps to track the movements and interactions of approximately 500 banded mongooses in Botswana. Their findings confirmed that animal behavior and disease transmission are closely linked, leading to distinct regions throughout the mongoose's natural environment. In high-traffic, predator-rich areas, such as urban centers or national parks, mongooses remain highly alert and focus their energy on scanning for threats and preparing to escape. This heightened awareness likely protected them from dangers, but it also limited their interactions with one another, decreasing the chances of Monsieur Mungi spreading. In contrast, at tourism lodges where predators are scarce and food, often left by humans, is plentiful, mongooses spend considerable time scent marking, and this creates numerous opportunities for the pathogen to be deposited on and picked up from various surfaces. Previous studies by Alexander and her colleagues have shown a light on how animal behavior influences disease spread. These new findings, however, introduce another layer of complexity to transmission, stating the significance of environments, an aspect that could eventually assist researchers in physically mapping pathogen-heavy hotspots within a species' known territory. According to Alexander, their results indicate an urgency in understanding how different landscape types influence animal behavior and how these interactions might increase or decrease the potential for disease. And it of course matters where an animal resides and how it behaves in that setting. You may have heard that mongooses hunt and eliminate snakes. You might have even seen a mongoose battling a snake, either in person or through a video. But have you ever pondered the reasons behind these confrontations? Why are mongooses and snakes adversaries? How and why do mongooses attack snakes? And what gives these unexpected little mammals an advantage in a conflict? Stay connected to learn more. Mongoose versus snake saga. Mongooses are fierce predators, but they typically won't attack without cause. Most of the time, they eliminate snakes to consume them, as snakes are a fundamental part of a mongoose's diet. The Indian gray mongoose is one of the most renowned snake hunters, recognized for taking on the king cobra, one of the most lethal snakes in the world. These mongooses hunt and murder these serpents in their natural surroundings and consume them all the way to the venom sacs. Mongooses may also fight snakes in self-defense and to protect their young, as some snake species prey on mongooses and can easily snatch unattended pups. Mongooses murder many different types of snakes, but cobras are particularly high on the list. Mongooses are largely resistant to the venom of poisonous snakes. However, despite their natural immunity, mongooses that engage in confrontations with snakes can still face the risk of injury or death. Many snakes, especially cobras, are much larger than mongooses and can put up a fight. At times, they may end up murdering the mongoose before it can defeat the snake. Even if the mongoose successfully ends the life of the snake, it can sometimes die while consuming it. The snake's fangs can penetrate the mongoose's stomach or another part of its digestive system, leading to internal bleeding and fluid leakage that can rapidly become fatal. So, when a mongoose hunts a snake, the fight often begins with the snake appearing to have the advantage. Mongooses may appear as harmless as a lamb, tentatively sniffing around the snake, but don't be fooled. In contrast, the snake may coil, hiss, and if it's a cobra, expand its hood as a warning for the mongoose to retreat. The snake is likely to strike first, attempting to intimidate the mongoose, and may even bite if the mongoose moves quickly enough. However, this initial bite typically does not harm the mongoose, and in many cases, the mongoose is agile enough to evade the strike. This dance between the predators may continue for several moments, with the snake making repeated attempts to strike while the mongoose skillfully dodges the attacks. Then, in an instant, the mongoose will launch its counterattack, bite down on the snake's head, incapacitate it, and prevent any further resistance. The snake may succumb immediately from this assault. If not, the mongoose will violently shake it, slamming it against the ground until it perishes. Why are mongooses immune to snake venom? According to the Animal Facts Encyclopedia, mongooses are not entirely immune to all snake venom, but they are relatively tolerant of it. For comparison, a human can succumb to a cobra bite in as little as half an hour. The venom affects the nervous system and swiftly disables the brain and nerves, which as a result impacts other major organ systems within minutes. However, if a mongoose is bitten by a cobra, it may not experience any adverse effects from the initial bite. Mongooses possess a specific neurotransmitter in their brains called acetylcholine. The acetylcholine receptors bind to the venom in the bloodstream, effectively neutralize it, and prevent it from attaching to the mongoose's nervous system. If the toxins cannot bind to the nervous system, they will pass harmlessly through the animal's bloodstream, eventually being filtered out by the kidneys and liver. Multiple snake bites may overwhelm a mongoose's natural defenses, and this allows some venom to reach its nervous system. This can cause the mongoose to slow down and permit the snake to continue striking, which may eventually lead to the mongoose's demise. However, in most situations, snakes don't even manage to land that first bite before the mongoose successfully murders them, because aside from their natural defense against this venom, they also possess great reflexes and make them capable of evading the snake's strike, giving them the ultimate tools for fighting a deadly snake. Rating some animals' immunity to snake venom. First on the list is king snake. Yes, king snakes are immune to certain snake venoms. They prey on other snakes, including venomous species, and have developed immunity to the venom of some of their victims, such as rattlesnakes. This immunity provides them a significant advantage, neutralizing the primary defense mechanism of their prey. Certain snakes have evolved immunity to specific toxins found in their prey. For instance, many toad species are highly toxic, yet some snakes have adapted to consume them despite this. Horses, on the other hand, are not naturally immune to snake venom. However, they play an important role in the production of antivenom. Often, retired racehorses, which remain strong and healthy, are used in this process. Veterinarians inject small, safe amounts of snake venom into the horses, prompting their immune systems to generate antibodies. After 8 to 10 weeks, scientists begin extracting blood from the horses to produce antivenom for human use. Throughout this process, veterinarians ensure the horses remain safe and healthy. Some sheep also exhibit immunity to pit viper venom, but they are still susceptible to bites from other snakes. Additionally, complications can arise from any snake bite. Similar to horses, sheep are also used in antivenom production, following the same procedures. Opossums, particularly those in Texas, also show immunity to rattlesnake venom. They possess a protein in their blood that binds to venom, effectively neutralizing it. Unlike horses and sheep, opossums are born with this protective protein. However, opossums in other regions, such as Australia, remain vulnerable to snake attacks. Neither dogs nor cats possess natural immunity to snake venom. However, cats tend to have a higher survival rate following snake bites compared to dogs, and sometimes even humans. This increased resilience is due to cat blood being more resistant to the anticoagulant effects of venom. In contrast, most dogs suffer from snake bites because the venom thins their blood, preventing clotting and leading to severe bleeding. While cat blood offers a better chance of survival, neither species has blood properties that confer true immunity to venom, and both can succumb to snake bites. Thanks for watching. Make sure to hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. For another interesting video, click on the video shown on your screen right now.